Hello, it's Tom with Digital Foundry taking a look at the visual changes in the Return to Arkham Remaster of Batman Arkham City. It's out on PS4 and Xbox One, and so for comparison we're pitting it against the original PC version running at max settings. It's from developer Virtuous, the team behind the Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD remasters, but this Return to Arkham package is clearly a more ambitious project. It takes the first two games in the series, which ran on a heavily modified Unreal Engine 3 originally, and converts each to a next generation Unreal Engine 4. This brings a host of visual tweaks, but the main points include remodeled characters, improved lighting, plus higher resolution effects and shaders. And yes, while there are some obvious enhancements, it's hard to call everything a clear upgrade here. First up, there's the obvious, the character models. Much like Virtuous's work on Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD, the game's colourful cast is given a facelift to varying degrees. These changes are, I understand, a bit of a subjective area, and may well put fans of the original off if they're familiar with that version. So let's go through a few. Here we have a complete revamp of skin shaders across Penguin's face, adding more stubble in the remaster and generally rearranging all the scarring detail. Even his monocle is given a crisper glass material, painfully crammed into his eye socket here. It's a pretty scary, unusual interpretation of the character, and one of the more radical changes in the Arkham City remaster. Other villains like Two-Face only get a slight tweak by comparison, with the character model is identifiably the same. For the most part, we're seeing a change in lighting play out here, and the same goes for Catwoman up close. It's the same face and animations, but the shift in lighting helps to create an altogether different look. Now curiously, many cutscenes, though not all, are pre-rendered to mask loading screens between gameplay, but every one is re-encoded using this new engine, with all the remodeled characters and lighting in use. Regardless of where you stand on the character changes, one thing that's clearly improved are the materials across the world, especially clothing. Stitching on Harley Quinn's corset, for example, is much higher resolution. Added to that, there's a newer, glossier material used across Batman's cape and Batwoman's too, which mimics the appearance of leather grain, rather than the plastic-like material we had on the PC original. That being said, it's not always improved. Check out the texture resolution of Hugo Strange's lab coat here, where the fibres are swapped out to leave a plainer normal map. On top of that, and this one jars a little bit, but a close-up of Batman's face as he puts on the cowl is clearly off the mark. In the PC original, the material wraps around his face quite smoothly, but the PS4 remaster shows aliasing artifacts all around his chin. It doesn't look great, and it could very well be a glitch, but we certainly prefer the look of the original here. In other words, the Return to Arkham changes look more detailed in some cases, but clearly there's an artistic misstep in others. One touch we do like is the added textures and objects across the world though. In fact, some details are completely new to the PS4 and Xbox One versions. For example, check out the freshly laid out carpets on the very first scene with Catwoman. Everything else appears in place as it did before, but these details do help to fill out the room, and this applies to the world outside in places as well. The other significant change Unreal Engine 4 brings is in the lighting. On PS4 we get enhanced bloom across Arkham City's many neon signs, a more effusive, brighter effect. It really stands out in comparison, and on the rain-slicked roads below, this light even produces wider, more exaggerated reflections than the original game. The same goes for flames in the smelting chamber section, and fire now directly casts light onto nearby surfaces. Even particle effects produce light here in the remaster, with a heavier bloom effect around each. Then again, in the first sequence with Bruce chained up, it's curious to see a much stronger bloom and lens flare on the PC original instead. You may have also noticed the colour gradings also changed radically between the two to give a greener hue to the remaster's earlier scenes. However, there are some obvious changes in the lighting department in this new version that strike us as clear downgrades. For example, where's the light shaft effect of the PC original while walking through these gates? It's completely missing in the remaster, and though still used in later scenes, it's massively dialed back where it is. All we have in its place in this scene are specular highlights on the rails, which are new, but this light shaft effect really added a sense of depth to the air, and for some reason it's been chopped out. Another curious omission is the depth of field effect. This may come down to preference, but notice how the focal blur across Arkham's distant buildings is missing in the remaster. Everything is in clear view and we kinda miss it. The range of graphical changes is considerable. Some are marked improvement in bringing out the original's details, others a step back. The core gameplay is the same as ever though, and with cloth physics on Batman's cloak still working exactly as it did before. It's also nice to see there's a clear upgrade in effects quality for Fire Alpha in this shot of the exploding tower. It's a small change and you can see everything around it animates as before, but with a sharper, higher grade alpha effect in the middle. Overall, the changes are a mixed bag. In some cases they bring out the original game's intention with a better quality asset, but in others we've clearly lost something in the transition to Unreal Engine 4. If you've not experienced Arkham City before, we're pretty sure you'll be impressed by the results anyway. On average, developer Virtuous adds more than it removes from the game, but those returning to the series will spot the changes immediately and miss the visual direction of the original, especially on PC. So with all that said, let's assume you want to check out the Return to Arkham remasters, but the question remains, which version should you buy? Well, it's missing a PC release right now, meaning you have a choice between PS4 and Xbox One. The difference in performance is covered in a dedicated video on our channel, but in summary the PS4 version is much smoother to play. Across the board we saw a higher frame rate on that version, but as for the visuals, well, there are a few big sticking points here too. Native resolution is a big one. From what we can tell, there's a dynamic frame buffer on each console that adjusts the pixel count based on the demands of each scene. On PS4 and Xbox One, this is handled by rendering 1080 pixels on the vertical axis at all times, but it's the horizontal axis that scales up and down in resolution based on load. The result is that PS4 often looks sharper in identical shots, simply because it stays closer to a full HD 1920 by 1080 resolution. Check out this outdoors shot. PS4 keeps the full 1080p frame here, no cutbacks in play at all, but moving to Xbox One it's clearly downscaled on the horizontal axis, creating visible noise and aliasing on this point. It's not a complete deal breaker for Xbox One and we're big fans of dynamic resolution in general, but if you're after the clearer image and higher frame rate, PS4's the one for you. Other graphical differences are worth mentioning as well. There's a much stronger bloom effect on PS4 for example, as the camera works its way around these neon signs. Actually, Xbox One's implementation looks closer to the original PC version, a subtler spread of light overall. It does stick out, but in general the lighting is matched between the two. In fact, most aspects of Arkham City are identical on either side outside of resolution and bloom. Though one curious detail we spotted is the slight difference in ambient occlusion. It's a minor change but does suggest a different screen space AO technique being used on PS4, though there really isn't much between them. As a whole, and factoring in the wavering performance on console, we'd recommend checking out the PC original first at max settings. These two console editions have some real plus points in visuals, and you get all the DLC ever released into the bargain, but this is also paired with some unusual technical choices. There is a sense you can get a much smoother, more consistent presentation with that first release on PC, and it doesn't take a monster of a graphics card to run it at 60 frames per second. For us, that's still the definitive release, but as an alternative, I still had plenty of fun with these remastered versions. It's the same fantastic game underneath, but sorely missing a 30 FPS cap and with visual changes that may put off long-time series fans. Anyway, that's about it for today. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this breakdown of the Return to Arkham remaster of Arkham City, and until next time, thanks for watching.